Before production vehicles were built and sold with race car power, the race for pure speed was long in the running. During the pioneering days of speed racing in the 1920s and 30s, few figures captured the public's adoration quite like Sir Malcolm Campbell. Holding the land speed record 9 times during his life, as well as setting 4 water speed records, the British-born motorist received a knighthood for his contribution to the field. Racing in a series of several cars he named Bluebird, the fastest of these was the Campbell Railton model, built in collaboration with British automotive engineer Reed Railton. A design of the modernist 30s, the Campbell Railton Bluebird featured a low rectangular cross-section, spanning the full width of the wheels for reduced drag. Its distinctive tombstone radiator grille could be closed with a movable flap, briefly enhancing the aerodynamic profile during record runs. Powered by a Rolls-Royce V12 engine, the Bluebird made record-breaking runs across the hard-packed sands of Florida's Daytona Beach in 1933 and again in 1935. Clocking what was an unprecedented top speed of 445 kilometres per hour. Campbell knew the car was capable of more. Believing that a lack of traction on the sand was holding the Bluebird back, Campbell's quest for speed led him to the Bonneville salt flats of Utah. Here, on September 3rd, 1935, with his young son Donald watching on, Malcolm Campbell set his last land speed record of 484 kilometres per hour. Dying in 1948, Sir Malcolm Campbell was a rarity among the speed racers of his day, not only with his long list of successes on land and water, but for the fact he died from natural causes rather than in a crash.
Well, Dad, I'm mighty glad you reached the 300, but I felt sure you'd do it.
Right, old chap, I'm very pleased too. But I reckon you've had a real good time whilst you've been over here in the States, because everybody's been so awfully kind to you, haven't they?
They sure have.
Following in his father's racetracks, Donald Campbell set land and water speed records throughout the 1950s and 60s. While a generation before, his father Malcolm had been the first to break the 300-mile-per-hour mark on land. It was Donald's great ambition to go even faster, with his sights set on breaking 400. This was the vehicle that he hoped would do it, the Bluebird Proteus CN7. The first car to be powered by a gas turbine engine, an engine that up until this point had only been used in airliners. Drawing air into the engine through the car's open nose, this painstakingly streamlined vehicle was thought to be capable of over 800 kilometres per hour. Returning in 1960 to the site of his father's last record in Utah, Donald crashed during a test run at around 580 kilometres per hour. Thanks to the tremendous structural integrity of the vehicle, he survived.
I have survived the fastest crash that mankind has ever survived.
Despite being intensely superstitious, Donald Campbell's bad luck continued. With the car completely rebuilt, a more promising racing ground had been located on the dry lake bed of Lake Eyre in South Australia, a site that had gone without rain for 9 years. Shipping car and crew to the remote location in 1962, the heavens opened up and the lake was ultimately flooded to a depth of 3 inches. Finally, after 18 months of waiting, Donald made his courageous record-setting attempt on the still damp track. He achieved his goal, scraping past the 400-mile-per-hour mark and setting a new land speed record of 648 kilometres per hour. Never getting the chance to race on land again, Donald died 5 years later during a water speed attempt. From the early 60s, the land speed record climbed steadily higher, with the title of fastest man on Earth being traded back and forth between a handful of drivers. Californian Craig Breedlove claimed and reclaimed the honour several times before putting an end to things. at least for a while, in 1965. Using a surplus General Electric J47 engine, common in military aircraft, Breedlove's first record-breaking runs were not accepted by the International Automobile Federation because his vehicle, the Spirit of America, had 3 wheels instead of 4. After a near-fatal crash in 1964, the undaunted Breedlove returned a year later with the 4-wheeled Spirit of America Sonic 1. Powered by a superior J79 engine, he held the official land speed record for all of 5 days before it was surpassed. But the very next week, Breedlove responded with a new record of 966 kilometres per hour. This time, the record would last 5 years before being broken in 1970. To claim it back, Breedlove set his sights on going faster than the speed of sound. But he was not alone. This was the vehicle that Breedlove was up against, the Thrust Supersonic Car, SSC for short. Designed by a British team headed by Richard Noble, who himself set the land speed record in 1983, this jet-propelled car had the express purpose of not only breaking the record, but breaking the sound barrier.
If you want to go faster than the speed of sound on land, your problems actually are larger than in air, because you have the solid boundary, the Earth, on which you're traveling, and that means there is a very small gap between the moving object and the Earth.
Propelled by a pair of afterburning Rolls-Royce Spey 202 jet engines, the same used in F-4 Phantom fighters, the Thrust SSC produced an awesome 110,000 horsepower, making it the most powerful car ever built. Designing a car this powerful was one thing. Finding someone to sit behind the wheel was another. With a select few capable of the job, a rigorous testing process arrived at this man, Royal Air Force fighter pilot Andy Green.
It's like a man walking on the moon. It's the 4-minute mile. It's climbing Everest. It's something that nobody's ever done before. It's something that no team has ever done before.
Green's challenge was immense. Unable to house steering gear at the front of the vehicle due to aerodynamic restrictions, the Thrust SSC was steered by its asymmetric rear wheels. Whether such an unusual system was viable at the speed of sound was uncertain.
From the aerodynamic point of view, make this very dangerous. You have this very slim cushion of high-speed air sitting underneath the vehicle, and there is a serious chance that this vehicle would be lifted.
Or if the nose were to dip, the car would drive itself into the ground. Everything hinged on having a perfectly neutral aerodynamic profile. Even if everything performed perfectly, the question of what happens when a land vehicle pierces the sound barrier remained unknown. There were fears that the resulting shockwave may derail or destroy the car, along with its driver. Nonetheless, in October of 1997, Andy Green and Craig Breedlove squared off in the Nevada desert to find out. Sadly for Breedlove, he never had his opportunity. With his latest Spirit of America suffering engine damage during a test run, he was forced from the contest and could only watch from the sidelines as Andy Green and the Thrust SSC took to the sands. 50 years and 1 day since Chuck Yeager and the Bell X-1 rocket plane first broke the sound barrier, Andy Green and the Thrust SSC joined the club, blitzing along the desert at a top speed of 1,227 kilometers per hour. This was the first time a car had gone supersonic. The record stands to this day, but it is not safe from attempts to break it. And Andy Green and the Thrust team are among those seeking to go faster still.